My name is Michael. I was 47 when I finally understood that a man can live inside a family for nearly 9 years and still be treated like a stranger standing at the door. When I married Laura, Tyler was 9 and Brooke was 7. Their father existed mostly as a name on old documents and an occasional voice on the phone. I was the one who stayed. I paid for their phones, their insurance, Tyler's football equipment, and Brooke's dance lessons. I bought school clothes, covered vacations, repaired broken laptops, and quietly put money aside for their futures. I never asked them to call me Dad. I only asked for respect. For years, I convinced myself they would understand when they were older. One day, I thought they would look back and remember who sat in emergency rooms, who drove through snow to pick them up, who worked late so they could live without fear. But gratitude never came. What came instead were eye rolls, slammed doors, and constant comparisons to the father who had abandoned every responsibility except the right to be admired. Laura always defended them. They're teenagers. They don't mean it. Give them time. Time. I had given them almost 9 years. The final blow came through a text message. I was at work when Tyler sent it. We had argued that morning because I told him he could not take my truck without permission. He called me controlling. Brooke joined in, saying the house felt like a prison. Then my phone vibrated. "We'd rather live in a dump than with you." I stared at those words until the screen went dark. There was no apology afterward. No second message explaining that he had gone too far. Just silence. Something inside me became still. Not angry. Finished. I did not call Laura. I did not confront Tyler. I did not send back a paragraph about sacrifice or respect. I made 2 phone calls. The first was to the mobile provider. I removed Tyler and Brooke from my account. The second was to the insurance company. Their coverage, registered under my name, ended at midnight. Then I opened my banking app and canceled every automatic payment connected to them. Sports fees, streaming accounts, spending cards. The small monthly transfers they had come to consider a birthright. Finally, I called a locksmith. The house belonged to me. I had purchased it 6 years before I met Laura. My name was the only one on the deed. By 6 that evening, the locks were changed. Tyler and Brooke arrived home around 7. I watched from the living room window as Tyler tried his key, frowned, then tried again harder. Brooke stood behind him, carrying shopping bags bought with a card I had already frozen. They pounded on the door. Laura called me from the driveway. "What have you done?" I granted their wish. Her voice shook with disbelief. "They're children, Michael." They said they would rather live anywhere than here. I'm no longer stopping them. She told me I was cruel, vindictive, immature. I listened without interrupting. Then I said, "You spent years teaching them that my support was mandatory and their respect was optional. Now you can teach them what life costs." Their biological father was the first person she called. He refused immediately. He said his apartment was too small. His job was unstable. He could not afford 2 teenagers. When Laura reminded him they were his children, he told her not to make her problems his responsibility. That was the man Tyler had defended for years. The man whose blood mattered more than my presence. For several days, Laura and the kids stayed with her sister. Then her sister demanded money for food and utilities. Suddenly every meal had a price. Every shower increased a bill. Every ride required fuel. Tyler's phone stopped working. Brooke's card declined. Their father stopped answering. Laura called me every night at first. She said the kids were scared. She said they had learned their lesson. She said families forgive. But I had forgiven too many times without anything changing. So I remained silent. For the first time in almost 9 years, I came home to peace. No demands. No insults shouted from upstairs. No mysterious charges on my account. No wife explaining why disrespect was something I simply had to endure. The silence felt strange. Then it felt clean. Within 3 weeks, Tyler found work stocking shelves at a grocery store. Brooke started serving tables at a small diner. They had to pay their rent for the room they shared. They took buses. They counted every dollar. Reality changed them faster than any speech I could have given. A month later, Laura came to see me alone. She looked exhausted. "I failed you," she said. "I kept asking you to be patient because confronting them was harder. I let you carry everything." It was the first honest thing she had said in years. We did not reconcile that night. Trust does not return because someone finally admits where it was buried. But we began talking. Slowly. Carefully. Tyler apologized 2 months later. He stood on my porch with his hands shaking and admitted that sending that message had been the biggest mistake of his life. Brooke cried when she told me she had never understood what I paid for until she had to earn money herself. I accepted their apologies. But I did not restore their old lives. Respect built our new relationship, not dependence. They paid their own expenses. They worked. They asked instead of demanded. Laura stopped hiding behind excuses. Looking back, I do not regret changing those locks. Sometimes love is not rescuing people from consequences. Sometimes love is stepping aside and letting the weight of their own choices reach them. They believed I was only the man who paid. So I stopped paying. And only then did they discover I had been the man holding their entire world together. Was I wrong to make them pay the price of their own words? For the first few nights after Laura left with Tyler and Brooke, I slept badly. Peace had entered the house, but peace has its own noise when a man has spent years listening for footsteps, arguments, demands, and doors slammed hard enough to shake the walls. I would wake before dawn and stare at the ceiling, expecting someone to shout my name because a phone bill was overdue, a car needed fuel, or some emergency had appeared that only my wallet could solve. No one called. No one knocked. The silence remained. At work, I found myself checking my phone out of habit. There were no messages asking for money. No screenshots of online shopping carts. No reminders about insurance payments or sports fees. For years, I had confused being needed with being loved. Now, with every cancelled service, I was learning how little those two things had in common. Laura called on the 4th day. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "Tyler's father won't take them," she said. I looked out through my office window at the gray parking lot below. "I heard. He says he doesn't have room. He had room for promises." She went quiet. Then she told me they were staying with her sister, Denise. 4 people were sharing a 2-bedroom apartment. Tyler slept on the couch. Brooke slept on an air mattress beside her mother. Denise had already complained about the food disappearing too quickly and the water bill rising. Laura waited for me to offer a solution. I did not. "Michael," she finally whispered, "they can't live like this. They said they preferred a dump." That was anger. No. That was honesty without consequences. She began crying. Once, those tears would have broken me. I would have driven across town, loaded their bags into my truck, and brought everyone home before dinner. I had always been the bridge back from disaster. That night, I remained seated at my desk. Laura asked whether I still loved her. I told her love had never been the problem. "The problem is that you watched them reduce me to a bank account," I said. "Every time you excused them, you told them I would keep paying no matter how they treated me." They're scared now. So was I, Laura. Every day. I was scared that if I stopped providing, I would discover there was nothing else holding us together. She had no answer. The next week was harder for them. Tyler's prepaid phone ran out of data. Brooke's dance studio removed her from the program when the monthly payment failed. Their father ignored 3 calls, then sent a message saying he could contribute $50 after payday. $50. I had spent more than that on one of Tyler's football dinners. Laura tried to use her own credit card, but it was nearly maxed out. She had never paid household expenses before. I handled the mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, repairs, and every invisible cost that kept our lives smooth. Her income had always been her safety net. Now it was the entire net. It tore quickly. Denise demanded $300 a week if they planned to stay. Laura called me after hearing the amount, furious. "She's my sister. And this is her home. She knows what we're going through." I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny left in me. People understand hardship differently when hardship enters their kitchen and eats their groceries. Tyler called me that evening. It was the first time I had heard his voice since the text. He did not apologize. He asked whether I could reactivate his phone because employers needed a way to contact him. His tone was careful, but beneath it I heard the old expectation. He still believed I existed to remove obstacles. "You can buy a prepaid plan," I said. "With what money?" "That is the question adults answer every day." "I'm 17. You were old enough to tell me where you wanted to live." He cursed under his breath. Then he said, "You're enjoying this." That accusation stayed with me. Was I? I looked around the quiet living room. His photographs still stood on the shelf. Brooke's school portrait remained beside the lamp. I had not removed them. I had not erased the family. They had erased me first. "I'm not enjoying it," I told him. "I'm surviving it." He hung up. 2 days later, Laura sent me a photograph. Tyler wore a grocery store uniform. His face looked tired and humiliated. Brooke had begun applying at diners and clothing shops. Neither had ever filled out a job application before. I stared at the picture for a long time. Part of me wanted to rescue them. The old instinct rose inside me like a hand reaching for a familiar tool. I could have restored everything with a few clicks. I could have paid Denise, reactivated the phones, renewed the insurance, and returned the house keys. But then what? Another apology without change? Another season of contempt financed by my labor? I placed the phone face down. Weeks passed. The house stopped feeling abandoned and began feeling like mine again. I cooked meals I enjoyed. I slept through the night. I stopped working overtime because there were no endless expenses waiting for me. Money remained in my account after payday. More important, strength remained in me. I had not realized how tired I was until I no longer had to carry them. One Sunday morning, Laura appeared at the door. She looked older. Not by years, but by truth. "I taught them to depend on you," she said. "And I taught you that love meant accepting everything." I let her stand there. Behind her, the street was empty. "They're beginning to understand," she continued. "But I'm only now beginning to understand what I did." I wanted to forgive her. But forgiveness without proof had already cost me 9 years. So I asked the only question that mattered. "Do you miss me, Laura, or do you miss what I paid for?" Her face collapsed. And in her silence, I finally heard the truth. Laura left that afternoon without asking to come inside. I watched her walk to her car with slow, uncertain steps, and for the first time since our marriage began, I realized she had no idea how to solve a problem without expecting me to solve it for her. That realization hurt more than Tyler's message ever had. A cruel text could wound a man once. Years of quiet expectation hollowed him out a little every day. Life settled into a rhythm I had almost forgotten existed. I woke before sunrise, drank my coffee on the back porch, and listened to birds instead of arguments. I cooked only enough food for one person. The grocery bill dropped by more than half. My truck stayed clean because no one borrowed it, and returned it empty with fast food wrappers on the floor. At first those changes felt strange. Then they became peaceful. One Friday evening my accountant called. "You know," he said after reviewing my finances, "this is the healthiest your budget has looked in years." I laughed without meaning to. For nearly a decade every raise I earned had disappeared before I even saw it. There was always another expense. Another school trip. Another sports tournament. Another phone that had somehow been dropped into water or cracked on concrete. I kept believing the sacrifices were investments in a family that would eventually see me as more than a provider. Instead, I had become invisible the moment I stopped paying. 3 weeks after Tyler found work, Brooke was hired by a neighborhood cafe. The owner needed someone to clean tables, prepare drinks, and work weekends. Laura sent me another picture. Brooke wore an oversized apron and looked exhausted. This time there was no caption. She didn't need one. For the first time in her life, she had spent 8 hours on her feet earning money that disappeared almost immediately into transportation, food, and rent paid to Denise. Reality had become their new teacher. A few days later, Tyler appeared at my office. He looked different. Not broken. Older. The confidence that once bordered on arrogance had been replaced by something quieter. He waited in the lobby until my secretary asked whether I wanted to see him. I said yes. He stepped inside carrying no attitude, no excuses, no demands. Only silence. "I've been working at the grocery store," he finally said. "I know. I thought jobs were easy." I nodded but said nothing. "My manager yelled at me because I was 5 minutes late. That happens. My feet hurt every night." "I know." He lowered his eyes. "I never realized how many hours you worked." Those words landed harder than any apology. Not because they erased the past. Because they proved he had finally started seeing it. He rubbed his hands together nervously. "When I got my first paycheck." He stopped and swallowed. "I thought something was wrong." "Why?" "Because after taxes and rent and food, almost nothing was left." I leaned back in my chair. "That surprised you? I honestly believed you always had money." "No, Tyler. I always earned money." The room became painfully quiet. He looked around my office before speaking again. "I've been thinking about that text." I waited. "I wanted to hurt you." "I know. I didn't think words could actually change anything." "They usually don't," I replied. "Unless the person hearing them finally decides to believe them." His shoulders dropped. "I kept expecting you to call." "I almost did." His head lifted. "More than once." "Why didn't you?" "Because every other time I rescued you, nothing changed." He nodded slowly. I understand that now." Outside my office window, people hurried across the parking lot carrying briefcases and coffee cups, each one dealing with burdens invisible to everyone else. For years I had carried burdens no one in my own home bothered to notice. Tyler stood. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "Good. I just wanted you to know." His voice cracked. "I was wrong." He waited for an answer. I stood as well. "I appreciate that." Nothing more. No hug. No dramatic reconciliation. Respect grows slowly after trust has been shattered. As he reached the door, he turned back one last time. "I used to think you paid bills because it wasn't difficult. And now?" A faint, embarrassed smile crossed his face. "Now I know every dollar costs someone a piece of their life." When he walked away, I remained standing for several minutes. It wasn't victory I felt. It wasn't revenge. It was something much quieter. The first small sign that consequences had succeeded where endless patience had failed. The weeks became months, and something unexpected happened. Nobody asked me to rescue them anymore. Tyler kept working after school. Brooke picked up extra weekend shifts at the cafe. Laura rented a small apartment once she had saved enough to leave her sister's place. None of it was comfortable, but all of it was earned. One afternoon, Laura asked if we could meet for coffee. She looked calmer than the last time I had seen her. There was no panic in her eyes, no expectation that I would arrive with solutions folded inside my wallet. She sat across from me for several moments before speaking. "I owe you the truth," she said quietly. I waited. "I spent years telling the kids that they should appreciate you." I nodded. "But I never demanded it." That sentence carried more weight than any apology. She wrapped both hands around her cup. "Every time they rolled their eyes, I excused it. Every time they ignored you, I called it teenage behavior. Every time they compared you to their father, I expected you to be the bigger person. You did. I wasn't protecting them." Her voice trembled. I was avoiding conflict. And you paid the price. For the first time since everything had fallen apart, I believed she understood. Not because she wanted another chance. Because she finally accepted her share of the blame. A week later, Brooke asked if she could see me. She arrived carrying a small paper bag. I brought your favorite muffins, she said, almost embarrassed. You remembered? She smiled faintly. You always bought them after my dance competitions. We sat on the porch where she had once refused to sit beside me. I've been thinking a lot, she admitted. When my first paycheck came, I was excited. And then? I paid rent, bus fare, food. I had almost nothing left. She laughed softly, but there was sadness behind it. I used to complain because you wouldn't buy me expensive shoes the same day I asked. I stayed quiet. I never wondered how many hours you worked before buying them. A tear rolled down her cheek. I thought money just appeared. No, I answered gently. It appeared because someone gave up time they could never get back. She covered her face. I'm sorry. Unlike the earlier apologies, this one asked for nothing. No phone. No money. No house key. Only forgiveness. Months passed before Tyler and Brooke came together. They stood at my front door looking uncomfortable, like strangers arriving at a place they once called home without understanding whether they still belonged there. Tyler spoke first. That text. He looked at the ground. I've read it 100 times. Brooke closed her eyes. I wish I had stopped him. You agreed with me, Tyler admitted. I know, she whispered. Silence settled between us. Then Tyler looked straight at me. Sending those words was the biggest mistake of my life. I believed I was punishing you, he continued. I didn't realize I was throwing away the one person who had actually been there every day. Brooke nodded through tears. Our father gave us promises. She swallowed hard. You gave us a life. I took a long breath before answering. I accept your apologies. Hope appeared on both their faces. But understand something. They listened carefully. Nothing goes back to the way it was. Neither argued. You'll keep working. You'll pay your own expenses. Respect isn't something you say once because life became difficult. It's something you practice after life becomes easier again. Tyler nodded immediately. So we earn trust back. Yes. Brooke reached over and squeezed my hand. For the first time, she whispered, I understand what family actually costs. As they left that evening, I stood alone on the porch watching them walk toward the street. They looked older than they had only a few months earlier. Not because time had passed. Because responsibility had. Looking back now, I have never regretted changing those locks. People often think love means giving until there is nothing left. I learned the opposite. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to protect people from the consequences they created themselves. Sometimes respect begins only after generosity ends. And sometimes the only way to save your own dignity is to stop carrying those who have forgotten the weight resting on your shoulders. So tell me honestly, if someone treated you like nothing more than a wallet for 9 long years, would you have kept paying forever, or would you have done exactly what I did?